Pro-democracy supporters in Burma are celebrating the success of Aung San Suu Kyi and her party in yesterday's by-elections. It now appears certain the National League for Democracy will win all but one of the 44 contested seats. But there are still many obstacles to Burma becoming a fully fledged democracy. Above the parliament and president, there remain two levels of military, and the military will still hold or control around 80% of the seats in parliament. For the latest, we were joined just a moment ago from Rangoon by Southeast Asia correspondent Zoe Daniel. Zoe, how important is this election result as far as Burma's transition to democracy goes?
Well, look, I think I'd describe it as a step. I mean, even if the National League for Democracy wins all 44 seats, as the most optimistic predictions suggest that it will, it's still only 10% or less of the lower house, and Aung San Suu Kyi herself is just one member. So while they'll have a presence in the parliament and their role will change, they'll be working from the inside instead of the outside, it's just a step in a process to democracy.
And what are the implications of having Aung San Suu Kyi in the parliament?
Well, I think the implications are quite major. I mean, obviously she has substantial star power and the government recognises that. In fact, they've said that to me quite directly, and they expect to use that. And I think she, to some degree, understands that she's going to be used. But she has said that if that leads to reform and change for the people of Burma, well, you know, that's reasonable. I guess the question is what she's risking by going into the parliament with people who were elected in what's broadly seen as a flawed election in 2010, members of the military and the ruling party after a long history of repression in Burma. She's essentially going to be sitting in the house with them and trying to work with them. And if she can't get her policies up, she may be at risk of losing some of her popularity. So she has taken a risk.
Well, realistically, what sort of influence can she expect to have over this parliament?
Well, look, I think her influence partly will be profile. You know, she has a lot of pull with the international community. I think that's pretty clear. The government wants sanctions lifted, and, you know, it's obvious that they're prepared to bargain a little to achieve that. So, you know, there's this push-pull of, well, if you reform and perhaps if you implement some of Aung San Suu Kyi's policies, the sanctions will be taken away. Also, we've seen that the parliament's slightly more reformist than you'd expect. You know, even in recent months, members of the military and the ruling party have voted against party lines. So it's not impossible to think that the NLD may be able to negotiate and cooperate with some of those members.
So is it largely expected that Burma will use this election result as a kind of bargaining chip in its negotiations with the rest of the world in terms of lifting those sanctions?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think they make any secret of that whatsoever. You know, I mean, when Hillary Clinton, the US Secretary of State, was here in December, she intimated that, you know, the US, for example, was waiting to see what happened at these by-elections to decide the next step in the lifting of sanctions. You know, I think Australia and the EU have indicated similar. I mean, now those countries will be talking to each other, to the opposition, to other governments in the region to make a decision about whether they will remove sanctions and whether they go for a staged removal. And we've already seen that to some degree. So, yes, I would expect that the Burmese government will expect a reward for holding relatively free and fair by-elections, although there were a few issues.
Zoe Daniel, thanks so much.
Thanks, Emma.